The elevator cable snapped at exactly 11:47 p.m., but Marcus heard them break 3 minutes earlier. He jolted awake in his 7th-floor apartment, ears ringing with a metallic screech that hadn't happened yet. The sound clawed through his skull like fingernails on steel, that groan of twisted metal under impossible strain. His neighbors slept peacefully, but Marcus sat up in bed, sweat cold against his spine, knowing with absolute certainty that someone was about to die. The gift, or curse, had started 6 months ago. A car accident that should have killed him instead rewired something deep in his brain. Now he could hear the future, but only its violence, only its endings. The screech of brakes 30 seconds before impact, the wheeze of failing lungs 2 minutes before the last breath, the crack of splintering bone moments before the fall. Tonight was different. Tonight the sound came with a name, whispered in static. Sarah Chen, apartment 3B. Marcus stumbled to the window. The sidewalk below was empty, the city asleep. But in his ears, the cable was already singing its death song. He pressed his hands against the glass. His breath fogged the window. And in that moment, he made a choice. He could warn her, run downstairs, bang on her door, save a stranger's life, and prove to himself that this nightmare gift could be used for something more than torment. Or he could stay, safe, let fate do its work, while he covered his ears and pretended he was still just Marcus Webb, insurance adjuster, not Marcus Webb, reluctant prophet of doom. The elevator hummed to life somewhere below. 11:45. 2 minutes left. He ran.
What would you do if you could hear tragedy before it struck? Not see it. Hearing is different, more intimate. Sound bypasses logic. It doesn't ask permission. It burrows straight into your soul. It's the difference between watching someone fall and hearing their bones break. One is observation. The other is participation. This is the story of Marcus Webb, a man who never asked to become time's most unwilling witness. 6 months ago, he was ordinary, unremarkable even. Insurance adjuster, lived alone, loved routine. Then came the accident, the one that killed his ordinary life and birthed something extraordinary and terrible. Now Marcus hears death's approach, like a radio tuned to the wrong frequency. Car crashes sound like thunderstorms. Heart attacks whisper like wind in autumn leaves. And murder screams.
Doctors called it trauma-induced auditory hallucination. Psychiatrists prescribed pills that wrapped the world in cotton. But Marcus knew better. When you hear a child's cry 30 seconds before she falls from the swing, and then see her stumble exactly on time, that's not hallucination. That's prophecy. Tonight, the prophecy has a name and an address. Tonight, Marcus must choose between the safety of silence and the terrible responsibility of intervention. Because sometimes the most dangerous sound isn't the one that wakes you up. It's the one that forces you to act. So ask yourself, if you could hear death coming, would you run toward it or away from it? Marcus is about to find out, and so are you. The elevator is humming. Time is running out. Let's begin.
Marcus's bare feet slapped against the cold hallway tiles as he raced toward the stairwell. Apartment 3B, 3 floors down. The elevator would reach Sarah Chen in 90 seconds, maybe less. The metal screech in his head grew louder with each step, accompanied now by something worse, the wet sound of impact. His mind insisted on providing detail, audio of bones meeting concrete. He yanked open the stairwell door and took the steps 3 at a time. His shoulders slammed into the wall at the 4th floor landing, but he didn't slow down. The sound in his head had texture now. Weight. He could hear the moment when the cable would snap, the brief weightless silence, then the terrible finality of the crash. 3rd floor. He burst through the door and sprinted down the hallway, identical to his own. Apartment 3B sat at the far end, dark, except for the blue glow of a television bleeding under the door. He hammered his fist against the wood. "Sarah Chen, you need to get out of the building." Silence. He pounded harder. "Sarah, the elevator, it's going to..." The door opened. A small woman in her 30s, paint-stained pajamas, confused frown. "Do I know you?" "You need to leave right now. Don't use the elevator." Her frown deepened. "I'm sorry, who are you?" In his head, the cable snapped. Marcus grabbed her arm and yanked her into the hallway just as the building shuddered. A tremendous crash echoed up from the shaft. Falling glass, twisted metal. Emergency lights flickered on, bathing the corridor in hellish red. Sarah stared at him, then at the emergency lights, then back at him. "How did you..." "We need to go, now." They ran down the stairs to the lobby. A crowd gathered near the elevator doors. Someone had forced them open, revealing the wreckage 3 floors below. The elevator car had pancaked completely, its roof barely visible in the shaft's darkness. "Jesus Christ," someone whispered. "If anyone had been in there." Sarah turned to Marcus, her face pale in the red glow. "You knew this was going to happen." It wasn't a question. Marcus said nothing. He was listening to something else now. A new sound, threading through the chaos of sirens and shouting. Soft, rhythmic, like footsteps. But these footsteps were coming through the walls. "Who are you?" Sarah asked again. But Marcus was already backing toward the exit because the footsteps were getting louder. They were coming directly above apartment 3B. Someone had been watching Sarah Chen. Someone who knew about the elevator. Someone who wanted her dead, and now knew that Marcus could hear death coming. The hunt was about to begin.
Marcus didn't go home. Instead, he sat in his car across the street from the building,
watching the emergency vehicles paint the night in red and blue. Sarah Chen stood on the sidewalk in her paint-stained pajamas, talking to a police officer and occasionally glancing in his direction. She'd asked for his name. He never gave it, just disappeared into the crowd. The footsteps in the walls had stopped, but he could still hear their echo. They hadn't been wraths or creaky old pipes. They had rhythm. They had purpose. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Impressive, Mr. Webb. Marcus's blood turned to ice. The voice was distorted. No clear gender, but confident. Too confident. Who is this? Someone who appreciates your unusual talents. Tell me, how long have you been hearing the future? Marcus hung up, immediately dialed 911. But before he could speak, his phone rang again. Same number. That won't help her, you know. Sarah Chen is still going to die tonight. The elevator was just the opening move. Marcus's grip tightened. What do you want? A choice. You can try to save her and fail because you can't hear everything that's coming, or you can walk away, pretend it never happened. Through the windshield, Sarah accepted a blanket from a paramedic, fragile in the floodlights, but there was steel in her posture, a survivor's stance. Why her? Wrong question, Mr. Webb. Try again. He thought back over the months. Dozens of near deaths. Car crashes, heart attacks, accidents. But never murder. Why do you know about me? Better, much better. You've been quite the mystery, always showing up just before the disaster. Paramedics call you the angel of accidents. But we both know you're no angel. Marcus tasted metal, the taste that always came before a new sound. But this time there was no sound, only words. I should have saved them all. You feel guilty, the voice continued. All those lives you could have helped. If only you'd acted faster. If only you'd been braver. Sarah Chen is your redemption. But your gift hasn't told you this yet. Saving her will kill 3 other people. The line went dead. Marcus sat in the darkness, the engine ticking as it cooled, watching Sarah give her statement to the police. In his head, new sounds were forming. Not cables, not static. Something sharper, faster. Gunshots. And they were getting closer.
Marcus found Sarah at a 24-hour diner on 5th Street, nursing a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. She'd changed into jeans and a sweater, but her hands still shook. He slid into the booth across from her, without invitation.
"You came," she said, as if she'd been expecting him. "You left your apartment. Smart. My apartment's on the 4th floor. When the elevator crashed, it took out part of the wall." She studied his face. Harsh fluorescent light. No shadows to hide behind. "You're going to tell me how you knew, aren't you?" Marcus hesitated. The truth sounded insane, even to him. But the voice on the phone had been right. He couldn't save everyone. Maybe it was time to stop trying. "Someone wanted you dead," he said. "The elevator wasn't an accident." Sarah's mug clinked against the table. "That's impossible. The building manager said it was mechanical failure. Old cables." "Old cables don't snap at the exact moment you call the elevator." She held his gaze, then pulled out her phone, showed him the screen. "I didn't call the elevator. I was painting. I haven't left my apartment all day." The metallic taste flooded Marcus's mouth, stronger this time. In his head, the voice echoed. "Saving her will kill 3 other people." The diner bell chimed.
3 figures entered. 2 men in dark coats, 1 woman with silver hair. They looked like insurance adjusters or tax attorneys. Forgettable, professional, deadly. The woman smiled at Marcus. "Time to go," he whispered. But Sarah was already on her feet, pale, staring. "I know them. The woman. She came by my apartment last week. Said she was from the city. Something about building inspections." The 3 agents spread out, military precision. 1 by the kitchen, 1 by the restrooms. The woman approached. "Sarah Chen," she said, "you're a difficult woman to kill." Marcus heard it then. Not gunshots, something worse. The wet, ripping sound of a blade slicing through flesh. He grabbed Sarah's wrist, yanked her from the booth. "Kitchen!" he shouted. "Everyone, get to the kitchen!" Behind them, chaos, shouts, glass shattering. But Marcus heard something else beneath the noise. Police sirens, still minutes away. And under that, a new sound, rhythmic, mechanical. A helicopter, getting closer. Sarah Chen wasn't just a target. She was the center of something much larger. And by saving her, Marcus had just stepped into the storm. They made it 6 blocks before the helicopter found them. Marcus pulled Sarah into a narrow alley between 2 aging apartment buildings. The searchlight swept across the street behind them. The chopper's rotors thundered above, but Marcus heard something beneath the roar. The voice from earlier, amplified now through loudspeakers on the aircraft. "Mr. Webb, you're making this unnecessarily difficult." Sarah pressed against the brick wall, her breath shallow. "Who are these people? What do they want with me?" Marcus listened. Beyond the noise, vehicles, multiple, approaching fast. Footsteps, above them, weapons, being readied. In 30 seconds, this alley would be a kill box. "What did you paint?" he asked. Sharp, focused. Sarah blinked. "What?" "In your apartment. You said you were painting. What was it?" "A landscape. Mountains. A lake?" "From memory or a photograph?" "A photo. My grandfather gave it to me before he died. Said it was near his village in China." Marcus didn't respond. He didn't have to. The helicopter's speaker crackled. "Ms. Chen, your grandfather was a very interesting man."
Did you know he was a cartographer for the Chinese military? Very detailed maps, very sensitive locations. Sarah grabbed Marcus's arm. They're talking about torture, aren't they? Marcus didn't answer. A new sound was rising. Not violence, something stranger. The whisper of paper rubbing against paper, like pages turning. He looked up. A fire escape zigzagged above them. Can you climb? Yes. Then climb, fast. They scrambled up the fire escape. Below, the alley filled with armed figures. Shouts, radios. But Marcus tuned it out, focused on that soft paper whisper. Fourth floor landing. The sound was strongest here, behind a window glowing warm yellow. Inside, an old man. A desk covered in maps and photographs. He looked up, smiled, held up a sign in careful English. "I've been waiting for you, Sarah. Your grandfather sent me a letter." The old man's name was Dr. Chen Wei, no relation to Sarah, despite the shared surname. He was a retired cartography professor, a collector of maps governments had tried to erase. His apartment, a museum of forbidden geography. Soviet military surveys, CIA topographical studies, hand-drawn maps from Chinese villagers. "Your grandfather and I," he said, "corresponded for 30 years. As he poured tea from a ceramic pot that looked older than the city itself, Sarah shook her head. She hadn't known. Marcus stood near the window, listening, always listening. The helicopter had moved off, but footsteps filled the stairwells. They had minutes. Dr. Chen opened a leather case, unfolded maps across his desk. "In 1962, your grandfather joined a geological survey team in western China. They discovered something extraordinary, a deposit of rare earth elements, worth billions. But the climate was unstable. The records were destroyed. The team disbanded. 3 of them died in an accident." He held up a photograph, identical to the one Sarah remembered. "Your grandfather kept this, not for money, but for justice, because he believed those deaths were not accidents." Marcus heard it. Soft footsteps in the hallway. He turned. "Time's up. We need to go." Dr. Chen gathered the maps into a waterproof case. "Your grandfather's photo made you the key," he said, "to something governments, corporations, and criminals have searched for over 60 years." The apartment door exploded inward. Marcus grabbed Sarah, shoved her toward the fire escape. Armed figures poured in. Dr. Chen didn't move, remained seated, hands folded. "The case, Sarah," he called. "Remember what your grandfather died protecting." Bullets shattered his teacup. Marcus snatched the case. They tumbled through the window. Behind them, Dr. Chen's voice, a Mandarin prayer, cut short by a single gunshot. They climbed, up and up, toward the roof. Below, shouts, radios, systematic searching. But Marcus heard something else, something that made his blood stir. Not sirens, not violence. The whine of a news helicopter, drawn by reports of gunfire. In the modern world, the best protection isn't armor. It's cameras. They reached the rooftop. Marcus pulled out his phone, dialed 911. This time, he didn't hang up. 6 months later, Marcus Webb sat in a quiet coffee shop, tablet in hand. The headline read,
Rare earth discovery leads to international mining rights agreement. Below it, a smaller story. Insurance adjuster honored for preventing building disaster. The sounds in his head had changed. They were still there, the whispers of tragedy, the metallic taste of danger, but now they came with something else. Choice. The knowledge that hearing death approach didn't mean you had to listen passively. Sarah Chen had used her grandfather's map to broker a deal that made her wealthy. But more importantly, it exposed the criminal network that had hunted the survey team for decades. The assassins, serving life sentences. The helicopter crew, extradited, 3 different countries. Marcus's phone buzzed. A message, unknown number. Thank you for saving my daughter. Dr. Chen Wei's son. He looked up, and there she was, Sarah, smiling, 2 cups of coffee in hand. Ready for our date? She asked. Marcus had learned to listen for different sounds now, not just the ones that warned of death, but the ones that whispered of life. The rustle of a new beginning, the hum of a future unwritten. He could still hear what was coming, but now, instead of running from it, he walked alongside it, with someone who understood that the most dangerous sound was never the one that warned you. It was the silence that followed when you chose not to act. Marcus chose to act, and the future chose to sing.